The Fateful Encounter. Caleb Harris sat in the back seat of his black Mercedes as it glided through the snowy streets of downtown Portland. His phone buzzed constantly with emails and messages from his team demanding his attention on the final business day before Christmas. Most people were home with their families, wrapping gifts and preparing holiday meals, but Caleb was reviewing quarterly reports and approving merger documents. The Christmas lights twinkling across storefronts meant nothing to him. They were merely decorations in a city that never truly stopped working. He had spent the last 20 years building his empire from the ground up, and now, at 35, he was one of the wealthiest men in the state. Yet wealth had come at a cost. He had never married. He had no real friends outside of business associates. His family barely spoke to him anymore because he had missed too many gatherings and broken too many promises. Christmas had become just another obstacle in his schedule, something to endure rather than celebrate. As his driver turned onto Mountain Pass Road to take a shortcut toward his penthouse, the weather suddenly worsened. The snow that had been gentle and picturesque became a blinding wall of white. The wind howled against the windows, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Caleb barely noticed. He was too busy typing a response to an email when his driver suddenly slammed on the brakes. The car skidded slightly on the icy road before coming to a stop. "What happened, Davis?" asked Caleb, irritated at the interruption. "Sir, there are people on the side of the road," the driver said, pointing ahead. Through the whiteout, Caleb could make out two figures huddled together near a broken-down sedan. A woman was holding a small child close to her body, trying to shield him from the freezing wind. They looked absolutely terrified and alone in the vast expanse of white. Caleb felt a strange pull in his chest, something unfamiliar and uncomfortable. His instinct was to tell Davis to drive on, to call someone to help them, to let someone else handle it. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way the woman was holding the boy so protectively. Maybe it was the desperate look in her eyes as she glanced at their passing car. For the first time in years, Caleb made a decision based on something other than profit. He told Davis to stop.
The Stranger in the Snow. Emily Brooks could no longer feel her fingers as she held Noah tighter against her chest. The 8-year-old boy was shaking uncontrollably, and she was running out of time. Their ancient Honda had broken down in the worst possible moment, at the worst possible place. They were miles from civilization, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. She had been so careful with her money after losing her job 3 months ago, but she had put aside enough for this one trip. She desperately wanted Noah to spend Christmas with his grandparents in Seattle. He deserved that happiness after everything she had put him through. They deserved a break, just one magical moment together before returning to their tiny apartment and the uncertainty of finding new employment in the new year. When the black Mercedes pulled up beside them, Emily thought she might be hallucinating from the cold. The window rolled down smoothly, and a man with sharp features and penetrating gray eyes looked out at them. He was impeccably dressed in an expensive overcoat, and he looked completely out of place in this frozen wasteland. Emily instinctively held Noah closer, ready to run if this stranger meant them harm. But something in the man's expression was genuine. It was concern, not predatory interest. "My name is Caleb Harris, and you need to get out of this cold immediately," he said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "We cannot accept help from strangers," Emily said, her voice weak but determined. "Then consider me your guardian angel for tonight," Caleb replied. "I have heat and safety. You have neither. Please let me help you." Emily looked down at Noah, whose lips were turning blue, and she made the only choice a mother could make. She nodded, and within seconds Caleb had opened the car door and ushered them inside. The warmth hit her like a physical force, and Emily felt tears streaming down her face. As Davis drove them toward town, Caleb wrapped warm blankets around both of them and handed Emily hot coffee from a thermos. She watched him suspiciously, waiting for some ulterior motive, but he simply sat across from them with genuine concern in his eyes. "Where were you headed when your car broke down?" Caleb asked gently. "Seattle," she whispered. "My parents' house. We have not seen them in 2 years." "Then Seattle is where you will go," Caleb said without hesitation. But first, we stop at Riverside Inn so you can warm up properly and have hot food. You look like you have not eaten well in quite some time." Emily wanted to protest. She knew she could not afford a nice hotel. But Noah was watching her with hopeful eyes, and she was too exhausted to argue. As they pulled up to the beautiful Victorian Inn with its twinkling lights and wreaths, Emily felt something shift inside her. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope that things might actually get better.
Secrets by the fireplace. The room at Riverside Inn was the most luxurious space Emily had ever occupied. Noah was asleep in the adjoining bed, still wrapped in blankets, and a hot meal sat heavy in his little stomach. Emily sat in front of the fireplace in the sitting area of the suite, nursing a cup of herbal tea. She could not believe this was happening. This morning she had been terrified about losing everything, and now she was in a penthouse hotel being cared for by a mysterious millionaire. Caleb entered quietly carrying 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to her and settled into the chair across from the fireplace. His presence was commanding even in stillness. Emily noticed how the firelight played across his face, softening the harsh lines of his features. She had never met anyone like him before, and her confusion about his kindness was replaced by an overwhelming curiosity. "Tell me about yourself," Emily said softly. "A man like you does not stop on a snowy road to rescue strangers without reason." Caleb smiled sadly into his wine. "Maybe I finally realized that I should be that kind of man. I have spent my life acquiring things, but acquiring nothing that actually matters. I have no one to share my success with, and no one who actually cares about me beyond my bank account." Emily listened as he spoke about his empty life and his work-obsessed existence. She found herself opening up about her own struggles, her job loss, her desperate attempt to give Noah a normal childhood despite their circumstances. As the night deepened, they moved from wine to coffee and from careful questions to raw honesty. Caleb asked about Noah, and Emily talked about her son with such fierce love that Caleb felt something crack open inside his chest. "You are an extraordinary mother," he told her. "I'm just doing my best," Emily replied, "and sometimes my best does not feel good enough." Caleb reached across the small distance between their chairs and took her hand. The touch was electric and unexpected. Emily gasped, not from shock, but from recognition. In that moment, something shifted between them, something that neither had planned for or expected. Caleb looked at her with new understanding, as if she was a puzzle he was suddenly desperate to solve. "There is something you should know," Emily said suddenly, her voice shaking. "Something about my past and about my family." Caleb waited patient and silent as Emily gathered her courage. She took a deep breath and told him the story her father had told her years ago. How he had once helped a business family during a financial crisis, how that family had never thanked him or acknowledged his kindness, how that family had prospered while her father had struggled and eventually died from stress and illness. She told him that her mother had recently given her a photograph of the family her father had helped, and Emily realized with shock that it was the Harris family. Caleb Harris was connected to her past in ways neither of them could have predicted. Caleb stood up slowly, his face pale. He walked to the window and stared out into the snowy night, unable to process what Emily had just revealed. The universe had brought them together not by chance, but by a thread of karma and family history that neither of them had known existed. Everything he felt for Emily suddenly became more complicated and more real. The question was no longer whether he could save her, but whether he was brave enough to face what this connection truly meant.
The weight of history. The morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of the Riverside Inn, and Caleb had not slept. He spent the entire night in his own suite downstairs, researching his family history and trying to find any record of Emily's father. Around 3 in the morning, he found the old correspondence in a digital archive his mother had stored. Letters between his father and a man named David Brooks, thanking him for a crucial loan that had saved the family business during the 1990s recession. His father had promised to repay him, but somewhere in the years that followed, his father had passed away and the debt was forgotten. Caleb realized with crushing guilt that his entire empire was built partially on a foundation of debt to a man he had never met and never thanked. When Emily came downstairs with Noah for breakfast, Caleb was waiting in the dining room. His expression was troubled, and Emily immediately sensed something had changed. He told her everything, showing her the letters and documents that proved his father had received crucial financial assistance from her father decades ago. Caleb explained that his success was intertwined with her father's sacrifice, and that he had been living in undeserved prosperity while her family suffered. Emily felt tears flowing down her face as she listened. Her father had never told her about the loan, expecting nothing in return. He had simply given help to someone in need and accepted the consequences when repayment never materialized. Now her father was gone, and she had learned his greatest act of kindness had been forgotten by the very family it had saved. "I want to repay him," Emily said firmly. "I want to honor what he did." "It is too late to repay him," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "But I can honor his memory by taking care of you and Noah the way he would have wanted. I can build something meaningful with my life instead of chasing empty success." Emily shook her head, confused. "You cannot feel obligated to us just because of what happened in the past." "This has nothing to do with obligation," Caleb said, standing and taking her hands in his. "This has everything to do with the fact that I am falling in love with you, and I believe fate brought us together so I could finally understand what truly matters in this world. Your father taught my family that lesson through kindness, and I learned it again through you. Do you understand what I am saying, Emily?" Emily looked into his eyes and saw genuine emotion there, raw and real. She understood that he was offering her not charity, but partnership, not debt repayment, but love. Yet she was terrified, because accepting his love meant trusting that he would not abandon her when the novelty wore off.
Christmas morning forever. 3 months had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve, and Caleb had transformed his life in ways that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. He had stepped back from daily operations at his company, delegating power to trusted executives. He had bought a beautiful house with a backyard where Noah could play, and a kitchen where Emily could cook the meals she loved. He had attended Noah's school events and helped him with homework, and slowly built a real relationship with the boy who was becoming his son in every way that mattered. Emily had found a job at a local community center, working in their educational program, and she was thriving. She had her own income and her own purpose, but more importantly, she had love and stability. She and Caleb were planning for their future together, and had already discussed marriage, children, and growing old as partners. The emptiness that had once defined Caleb's life was gone, replaced by laughter and chaos and genuine human connection. On Christmas morning, exactly 1 year after the snowstorm that brought them together, Emily and Caleb stood in their kitchen making pancakes while Noah set the table. Caleb was wearing a ridiculous reindeer sweater that Emily had bought him as a joke, and he wore it with pride because it made Noah laugh. They were poor in the things that had once mattered to Caleb, like financial dominance and business achievement, but they were rich in everything that actually counted. After breakfast, Caleb led Emily to the living room, where a small box sat under the tree. His hand shook slightly as he opened it to reveal a ring with a diamond that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. He got down on one knee in front of Emily and Noah, as tears streamed down his face. "Emily Brooks, will you marry me and help me build a life that actually means something?" he asked. Emily said yes before he could even finish the question, and Noah jumped up and down screaming with joy. As Caleb slipped the ring onto Emily's finger, he whispered a quiet thank you to her father, whose kindness and sacrifice had somehow reached across time to save him from a life of meaningless achievement. The Christmas miracle had not been about chance or fate or a fortunate encounter in a snowstorm. It had been about redemption and second chances, and the power of love to transform a person from the inside out. Caleb Harris had arrived at Riverside Inn as a lonely millionaire, disconnected from humanity, and he was leaving as a man who had found everything he never knew he was searching for. Emily and Noah had given him family, and Emily had taught him that the greatest wealth was not measured in money, but in the people who loved you and the legacy of kindness that stretched through generations. As they celebrated together, surrounded by warmth and light, Caleb finally understood the true meaning of Christmas, and it had nothing to do with business or profit or achievement. It was about love and connection and second chances and the miracle of finding home in another person's heart.